Welcome to the PDX Files. Each week we dive into the weird and the unexplained here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. My name is Peach.
And I'm Mac.
Mac, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, I don't know how many of you all have seen a certain movie called The Matrix. I don't know if we're allowed to say that on YouTube. The Matrix, I guess. But in that movie, certain individuals believe that they were in perhaps another dimension or maybe even a hologram. And so in this episode, we're going to kind of dive in to the possibility that we're just perhaps just part of a program, right? It's something that I've seen online before. I haven't done a deep dive into it because it seems like a bunch of nonsense, but I keep hearing about that the universe itself might be a flat, right? It's not like a big orb that explodes out, but it could be flat, like it's on a hologram. So I think it's an interesting topic, something to kind of get the brain muscles going, and we're
Yeah.
happy to dig in. I do want to give the listener just one advance note that we are both ill or, or are recovering from illness, so we apologize for our voices. But yeah, this shows our dedication to you.
Absolutely. Also, I should note that if everything that on this video is true, we are a simulation right now. So,
And we're not really sick. That's the whole thing. It's like I wish I could
yeah.
just, if that were all true, like I wish I could mentally just make the illness go away. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
exist.
Reset. Press the
I'm
reset button.
I'm just taking the blue pill at that point, or is it the red pill? I think it's the red pill is the one.
Red is to stay. No?
Red is to stay. Yeah. So I guess see, I kind of want to stay. I kind of agree with the guy from the Matrix from the very first one. It's like I know the steak isn't real, but it tastes amazing.
Yeah.
I want to be in that world.
Absolutely. Well, as usual, I have not seen this video, so I will be viewing it at the same time you are, if you're watching this on YouTube, or you are listening to it if you got us on a podcast. And here we go.
As it stands now, evidence keeps building to support the theory that we live inside of a simulation. Over the course of this video, you'll hear a lot of evidence. But what might be more troubling is the lack of evidence against the simulation theory. Evidence that proves the universe is in fact real. In fact, we can't currently prove that all of this isn't a simulation. New York University philosopher David Chalmers doubts it's possible to prove that we don't live inside of a simulation. He says, you're not going to get proof that we're not living in a simulation, because any evidence that we get could be simulated. Meaning, if the simulation doesn't want us to know something, we aren't going to know it. Interestingly enough, the probability of us living in a simulation versus reality has actually been calculated. Thanks to David Kipping, an assistant professor of astronomy at Columbia University, and mathematics way above my pay grade, we currently sit at 50-50 odds. One half that this is the baseline reality, and the other half that this is not. Kipping goes on to say, the day we invent that technology, and that technology being the ability to create simulations ourselves, it flips the odds from 50-50 to us almost certainly not being real, according to these calculations. It'd be a very strange celebration of our genius that day. Yeah, it only gets worse from here.
Okay, that is pretty scary. I do agree that that's a pretty scary thing to think about. The fact that the odds keep going up depending on how you look at it. That's freaking insane.
And the fact that if we are in a simulation, there's no way to prove it. Much is the same
Exactly.
way that, isn't there a saying about like, there's no way that we can fully and adequately study the human brain?
Yeah, I mean, we can't even study the bottom of our oceans for Christ's sake. I mean, how are we going to be able to do
That's a
that?
good point.
It doesn't like even if we knew somehow it's a simulation, we're going to somehow end up putting a base on the moon next year. It's so weird. But to hear that, well, it's 50-50, but there's really no way of disproving it. So it's even higher likelihood that we are. That's not a good thing.
Well, it kind of is the same or a very similar, I don't know, thinking or approach to anything that can't be easily explained, right?
That's
So much
true.
the
That's
same way
true.
that we
Yeah.
view paranormal or extraterrestrials.
Or God. for that
Or
matter.
God. All right.
Indeed.
Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm seeing at my where I'm supposed to start this, and we'll restart it now. Well, will we restart it now?
I randomly had a conversation about Princess Diana. Later that day, a person I had never seen before or since just so happened to walk by wearing a Princess Diana shirt. Was this simply a coincidence? Just an extremely rare and remarkable circumstance without an apparent causal connection? Perhaps I only noticed it because I talked about her earlier in the day. Nevertheless, coincidences like this stand out, and I'm sure all of you have experienced some of them yourself. Now, is this evidence of the simulation updating to more closely align with our thoughts and preferences? It's like when you learn a new word and then you hear it everywhere, or you get a new car that you've never had before and then you see it all over the place. The amount of coincidences humans come across is, at the very least, questionable. It strikes me as odd that so many coincidences all occurred on this single planet. We're perfectly safe in the habitable zone, with the perfect mixture in our atmosphere to sustain us. Here's another one. During a total solar eclipse, the moon lines up exactly with the sun, obscuring it completely. That doesn't sound too remarkable or coincidental until you realize that the sun is 400 times larger than the moon. And amazingly enough, the moon is 400 times further away from the sun. It's mathematically stunning that it aligns so perfectly. Or what about the fact that when water freezes, it becomes less dense? Again, this doesn't sound too remarkably coincidental, but the fact is, this detail has allowed all life on Earth to survive. Water covers most of the Earth, and chemically it is one of the strangest. Other substances get more dense when they are frozen, but liquid water is the opposite. Because of this, when water turns to ice, it floats. Why does this matter at all? Well, if ice didn't float, but instead sank to the bottom, all water would eventually have frozen over and killed all life within it. The multitude of ice ages this planet has gone through would have killed all life in land and in water. Our evolution would have completely changed or not happened at all if not for this strange detail. Another example is how the single highest point on Earth, Mount Everest, amazingly enough has the lowest oxygen levels that human life can tolerate. It's as if it was exactly measured out to perfectly allow for humans to climb it. Now, I could go on and on about the interesting coincidences and synchronicities that our reality has to offer. So let's instead end this section with one more personal example of mine. It was about a sushi knife. I've never owned one of these tools before, nor did I know they existed, until I randomly had a dream about finding one in my kitchen drawer. Waking up, I thought, that's weird and random. I wonder if that thing's real. Now, this thought never left my brain. I didn't say it out loud. I don't watch any cooking shows. I didn't search up any dream meanings. It was just a dream and a thought. Well, later that day, I got an ad on Twitter for a sushi knife. I can't explain this. How did I go from never hearing of, talking about, or using an object to dreaming about it and then getting an ad for it? This is something I did not know existed until I had a dream and I thought it was something I made up. I honestly have no idea. The world has so many strange coincidences and synchronicities. It really makes you wonder.
If true, that's some fucked up shit. And I do have, I don't know if I have an example of a dream that came true like that, but I've certainly, and I think we know that, Alexa or Siri is listening to us all the time. So it's not that surprising. Even if you don't search for something, then it shows up in your stream or as an ad.
Yeah,
That
we've had that happen in real
absolutely,
time.
yeah. But if that's true, that's pretty damn interesting because that's a coincidence that I don't think I could overlook. You never thought about it before. You had a weird dream about sushi and a knife, and suddenly you have that happen. If true, again, if true, that's just very, very disturbing.
I do want to talk about that eclipse thing, though.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I mean, yes, uh, if it's a total solar eclipse, or was it a solar eclipse or lunar eclipse that he was talking about?
solar eclipse.
So if it's a total solar eclipse where you've got complete, what do they call that? Complete darkness. You know how there was that path of totality or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Something like that. But that's only viewable at certain locations on the Earth.
right.
So for him to say that what's such a coincidence that the sun is much further away from the Earth, but how the moon can fit in it from a visual standpoint. Well, that's if you're in the path of totality.
But it's interesting that it's the exact distance. Like it has to be that exact distance for it to work. So that phenomenon wouldn't work on any other planet in the solar system, right? Almost certainly.
Well, it yes, absolutely. It's definitely a coincidence in terms of the way the distance, the way the moon is positioned in relation to the Earth, between the Earth and the Sun in a solar eclipse. Absolutely. But I'm just saying that if he's you know, if I were never in the path of total darkness or whatever you call that, and I'm it's
I think the
pathetic that
path
I
of
don't
totality
remember
is correct. Yeah.
path of totality, I will never view the moon fully blocking the sun. It's always going to be a partial. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I would not be fascinated by that at all. That's what I'm
I
saying.
I think the one that makes a little bit more sense is kind of that whole uh, or that's really interesting how it works. I mean, and we don't understand is kind of how that was that whole thing with the ice that goes down to the
Yeah,
and things of the nature. It almost seems like it's a cheat code, right?
yeah,
Or it's specifically made to sort of help us through.
yeah.
I find that pretty interesting, and I do think that the idea of deja vu, like I have had some serious, like actual, this has happened before kind of stuff. So it isn't like a black cat walking down the hallway in the Matrix, but it's similar to that. But it's just like I remember being here before in a situation like this,
Right.
and there's been times that it's been a dream, and there's been times it just sort of comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh my god, this has happened before. That's such a
Yeah.
strange phenomenon. We're gonna have to do an
It,
episode on that.
yeah, we have to. I guess where I am on coincidences and synchronicities is to be careful about um you know our tendency to find meaning in patterns. It's called apophenia or something like that, where
Yeah,
you
in
know
images. Yeah,
in images, and so the whole, or even like in conditions. So like he says in the video, isn't it odd that the highest point on the planet is also where we've got the least oxygen? So it's almost like it's a firmament has been established.
well, that
Um,
that kind of reminded me a little bit of the Truman Show when he said. That's why I said Truman Show is like, this guy has grown up in this one place where everything is just right, and he can't go any further. There's things stopping him, right? So that could
yeah,
be a part of that program that stopped us from going any further than
yeah,
that. They built the perfect mountain, and put it there knowing that the program is going to want to make humans like try to climb that mountain
right.
is a very interesting concept. But I tend to I mean I totally agree. I mean I think at the end of the day that is just coincidental, and probably if it was another like 50 feet up, you could probably still climb the same mountain. So whatever the glitch is in the matrix is probably not going to affect solar eclipses, and probably
But
not. If it's that, I mean, if it's that detailed.
but obviously his anecdote about the sushi knife, again, bringing it back to that real quick, uh, technology, it's interesting if it's something that happened to him, like say 25 years ago. I don't know how old this guy is. Without the Alexas and the Series listening to us all the time, would it have happened to him? Like I would be interested rather in believing or listening to this as a potential, Matrix glitch if it happened 25 years ago when there were no listening
Well, it
devices.
could be that in his sleep he was saying Ginsu, Ginsu.
Yeah, who knows? He might be a sleep talker, and how does he know if he's not, right? Um,
Yeah, there's so many variables, and really that's honestly what people have to do when they see some of these things, and hopefully they do when we watch us react to is like, okay, the evidence seems compelling, but there's really no evidence,
well,
right?
again,
It can
I
be
think it's
explained away almost every single time.
exactly. I think, like I said, it's finding the patterns and trying to see what's about it. But hey, we're not trying to dock this video. I'm just
Not at all. It's a great
responding
video. We're
to
not even done.
the thoughts. All right,
Absolutely.
let's
Yes, sir.
continue here.
As we learn more and more about our world and the universe, the more it appears to be based on mathematical laws. For example, look at the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. It's found in nearly everything around us. Max Tegmark, a cosmologist at MIT, says, "If I were a character in a computer game, I would also discover eventually that the rules seemed completely rigid and mathematical, and that it just reflects the computer code in which it was written." Max's comments might sound a little out there, but over time it's been winning over other brilliant minds. One such example is James Gates, a theoretical physicist at the University of Maryland. James said, "In my research, I found this very strange thing. I was driven to error-correcting codes. They are what make browsers work. So why were they in the equations I was studying about quarks and electrons and supersymmetry?" This brought me back to the stark realization that I could no longer say people like Max are crazy. A lot of brilliant minds are starting to realize that just as a video game is programmed and structured logically, our world is very much the same. As humans become more intelligent and knowledge continues to amass, the rules of our reality become more apparent. Delving deeper into the concept that our reality is structured in a very rigid and mathematical way, what are some of these limitations of reality? Let's talk about a few of them. The first is the speed of light in a vacuum, given to us by Einstein's theory of special relativity. This is essentially the speed limit of the universe. But that begs the question, why? Why is there a limit to the speed in which light can travel? If we remove ourselves from this question for a second and return to the idea of video games, a potential answer arises. Video games are only limited by the weakest element running them: an underperforming CPU, a bottlenecked graphics processor, a limitation of RAM, a poorly optimized engine, etc. In all of gaming, these weakest elements create artificial limitations. For example, loading screens, draw distance, or texture pop-in. These are workarounds that are built in to accommodate the limitations. Now, let's bring it all together. The speed of light is the maximum speed limit of our universe because reality can't be rendered in less time than that. If we were to travel faster than the speed of light, we would reach a part of our universe that hasn't been rendered yet. The speed of light is an imposed limitation to keep the reality of, well, reality. If this is indeed potentially an arbitrary number set by the creators of the simulation to keep the simulation running properly, then one can assume that we can't travel faster than that because the simulation would break, and the reality of this reality would collapse. Essentially, the game would crash.
That's
That
interesting.
is super freaking cool to think about it
Yeah.
from that perspective. Because I've played video games where like shit goes down and the game does crash. You're like, oh shit, and we're back to the beginning. It's almost like the Big Bang. That's what the Big Bang is, right? It's part of the simulation. If we're able to find a way, or if something happens to disrupt that reality, it shuts down.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thought. The limitation of the rendering, right?
Yeah,
That's I don't know. It's definitely a thought-provoking concept. Even though, again, I go back to the apophenia thing. Um,
yeah. But I think that kind of goes back also to the point that the one guy was making, that you can't disprove it, and that it's more likely mathematically to look at it that way, that it is more like a simulation than not, because it's just too coincidental, too perfect.
Also, Einstein, as brilliant and smart and intelligent and genius as he was, is still only human and is still only understanding things that are limited as limited by the brain, by the gray matter inside his skull.
Or
So
is he an NPC?
is he an NPC? I don't know. He's definitely a main character in that video game, but again, his explanation, although again it's plausible and it's been adopted, this theory of special relativity is human made. So
Yeah,
uh,
and quantum mechanics and quantum theory have that's kind of been the kryptonite for Einstein as well. He called it spooky, but wasn't able to disprove it either. So the fact that, and that there it could be an electron or whatever it is. I'm an idiot, people. Sorry, but it exists in one place and exists in the same way, an exact duplicate in another place. That is interesting, and that reminds me of a video game as well.
well, isn't that the three body problem, or is that a totally different concept?
And that's your mom. You can't even have a comeback because we're sick.
So sorry again, folks. We're both sick. But anyway,
Yeah,
let's continue here.
we're very sick.
Consciousness is defined as the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. It's one of the most familiar parts of all of us, and yet also the most mysterious. Since the dawn of time, philosophers have asked, what is the purpose of consciousness? Why do we need consciousness? These deep philosophical questions have challenged the greatest minds throughout history, and thanks to the simulation theory, we might actually understand its purpose and why we need it. Consciousness is an interface between the self and the universe using all of our senses. The only reasonable explanation for consciousness's existence is that it is there to be an experience. Keep in mind that consciousness doesn't provide an evolutionary advantage that we know of, so what is the purpose of it? Either there is a role of consciousness at work that we don't know and haven't theorized yet, or the experience that consciousness provides is a function we serve, as in a product we create, an experience we generate as human beings. We are the ones creating this experience, and that is what consciousness is. Now, this is where things get uncomfortable, and again, if you're kind of lost, just stick with me. In philosophy, a qualia is defined as an individual instance of subjective conscious experience. Put simply, a qualia is the breeze of wind against your face, the taste of water, the excitement we feel when great news happens, as well as the fear created by bad news. All these experiences of consciousness are what we produce, and an individual experience is called a qualia. As I mentioned earlier, consciousness is something that we create that is not necessarily for us. Who do we create this product for? Who receives these created qualia algorithms that we produce? We don't know. But what we do know is that we are creating this consciousness, this experience, and that we apparently don't have any use for it. So the only logical next step is to surmise that this product serves something else. Which begs the unsettling question of who or what is this product for? If you haven't already made the connection to the simulation theory yet, let's break it down in the simplest way possible. When you are playing a video game, let's say Grand Theft Auto, is the character in the game you're playing as experiencing qualia, or is it ourselves? They do what we want them to do, and they act out the actions that we tell them to do, and by extension, we are gaining an experience through them. That is the qualia. They aren't gaining it, we are. The video game character goes through an experience, but their experience is very different from the experience we, the player, receive.
A lot of NPCs there.
That space between the character in the game and us, the player, exists in this gray area where experiences of the player and experiences of the character combine to form some type of consciousness. This is what the simulation theory believes consciousness is. Consciousness is that strange connection between us, the guiding voice in our head, and the experiences we live and feel on a day-to-day basis. It's the product we produce for whatever is on the other side of the simulation.
So you're leveling up every time, right? You do something.
Hang on a second. I wasn't supposed to stop it at this point.
Oh.
So let me keep it planned.
Product that we produce. We have a very similar connection to that in games today. It's extremely rudimentary, but we are already seeing technology begin to blur the boundary between us. When riding in a roller coaster as a character in a VR game, we feel the gravity of the roller coaster. But where's this gravity coming from? It isn't real, and yet it is. It exists somewhere in the space between the character that is riding the roller coaster in the game and our minds occupying the mind of the character. The gray space between us, that is consciousness. It's easy to imagine how in the future this experience will become grander. More experiences, more feelings, more qualia generated. For us. Video games are a $1 trillion industry currently, and this is all based on the small amounts of qualia we experience from them today. Just imagine the future 10 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. The demand is there, the desire is there, the money is there, and the interest is there. It's inevitable. Based on the simulation theory, the simplest explanation for the existence of consciousness is that it is an experience being created by our bodies and actions, but not for us. Just like a video game, we create incredible outputs of sensory experience, qualia generating machines. And just like a video game, our input, our product, is most likely for the benefit of someone or something else experiencing our lives through us.
I wonder if that's the reason why God needs us to worship so much, right? There's been some TV shows that kind of go along those lines. American Gods, I think it's one of those where when they moved to America, different versions of these gods kind of existed. But the reason why they were really able to maintain their strength is through worship or through the actions of human beings. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's pretty weird. I do say that I feel that Frodo later in the Lord of the Rings kind of lost all his quality because he couldn't remember the taste of bread, the breeze on his face, or the taste of whatever. So I know that's stupid, but I I feel bad for Frodo. But yeah, I mean that's an interesting theory that we're just here existing for somebody else's kind of gratification.
The concept of consciousness, of course, has been taken in multiple directions, right? Obviously the Matrix, which is what we're talking about right now, or potentially being in the Matrix, is all about that consciousness being manipulated, right?
Yep.
If we are by, as depicted in the Matrix movie, in a sort of liquid suspension in a pod, and our consciousness is the version that's living in the manufactured world. There are theories out there that in the future will just be a collection of consciousnesses that that are
That's
like
close
in
enough.
that are like basically matrix like in its application, where we've designed robots to and AI to m- manage our
Emulate us, essentially.
pods or manage our consciousness so that we achieve in
Yeah.
effect immortality that way, because that's kind of like what they're saying the future of humanity is trying to get to the point of is immortality, and it's all about preserving that consciousness, like getting rid of the physical form, preserving the consciousness, and that's how we live forever in a simulated world. It's kind of funny that obviously this video, and we're almost to the end of it, but this video is trying to question whether we're living in a simulated world or not, when there's already thought processes out there where that's kind of like where humanity might want to end up at, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if I want to end up there. I honestly do use AI as much as I think that Skynet's going to take over. I do use AI quite a bit, even almost on a daily basis, to help with communication through an email, or to analyze a resume. I do that now on a regular basis. I feel kind of dirty doing it because it basically telling me what I already know, but it's kind of nice to have that extra confirmation,
Oh
and
yeah.
it kind of cleans up kind of some of the stuff that I would normally put out there and be a little too wordy as far as things goes. But imagine if there was a highly powered and complex AI that was just taking note of our everyday activities, that could, so you don't need at that point DNA to clone anybody. All
Right.
you need is their words and their perception of what they are. And imagine if it would create it before you died, and you'd be able to meet yourself with all the knowledge that you had before, essentially. That'd be pretty goddamn trippy. I know that's like a whole other thing, but imagining that, meeting myself now, knowing all the stuff that I knew before and all the things that I've said and done,
Hmm.
that'd be weird. I mean, it's the same thing as like meeting yourself, but in a different way, because it's not really you. It's like all it's doing is looking in and analyzing the the statements and the words and the connotation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, obviously there are other sci-fi treatments regarding consciousness and AI, but with regard to consciousness, for instance, I think there's a show called Altered Carbon, where,
Mm,
it's a consciousness that's basically being transferred from one organic shell to another when the former organic shell is either dying or is dead or died somehow, but the consciousness before the organic shell dies is transferred to the new shell, and essentially again it's a version of living forever as long as the transfer is made.
yeah,
But the important thing here is what you just said, is that it's not just it's the consciousness, but also all the memories and the lived experiences that are transferred to the new shell. So
And
anyway,
really how it's and how it's translated by the AI. So it's almost like a game of telephone. It's like I'm going to live forever, the same attitude and knowledge that I have now. No, it will not be the same. It'll
well,
change over time. It'll be
right.
something completely different in 100 years.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of again, I think it's of transferring the consciousness, and in addition to that, maybe using AI to fill in the blanks. Maybe that probably come with that technology. Because remember, there
Yeah,
was a Black Mirror episode where the guy there
the
was
husband
he got
died.
the husband died, but he was recreated, but his personality in the recreated version was based
Yeah,
on his Facebook posts and social media posts and all that stuff, right? So he
yeah.
wasn't
So it's
necessarily
like
the same.
it was a facade, and then the like
Yeah,
the gal saw through it. It's like I can't do this anymore.
this is not. Yeah, it's not the guy. This is not the droid you're looking for. But to kind of go back to what you're saying earlier about gods, and how maybe their reality is based on the continued worship of them. So basically, it's an acknowledgement of their existence. There's actually in the Japanese lore and Japanese Shinto belief that where they have multiple gods, or there's like a mountain god, or there's a forest god. There's actually multiple anime, multiple manga where it's told from the perspective of the god and how the god is slowly fading because people are starting to not believe in them. And
Right.
so that's also an interesting element for sure from in terms of consciousness.
Yeah, it's like a game that is kind of past its prime. So the programming is like recognizing it. It's like no one's playing this anymore.
Yep.
What are we gonna do to make it better?
There's also quite a few anime with that one too, where it's like the gamers or the game characters don't realize that they're game characters, and then their world starts to die because people aren't playing the game anymore. It's an interesting thing for sure.
Crazy.
All right, we'll wrap things up here with the last part.
DNA is a self-replicating material that is present in nearly all living organisms. DNA is, in simple terms, nature's hard drive, capable of storing, replicating, and transmitting massive amounts of information. Everything from your physical features to your likelihood of dying from a certain disease. It's the incredible secret behind life, and for as much as we know about it, there is still so much more that we don't. Researchers in New York incredibly found a way to use DNA like an actual computer's hard drive, by successfully storing, replicating, and retrieving several digital files. And no, this isn't a joke. These scientists were able to transfer real-world information into binary code, and with the help of a DNA constructing startup company, they were able to implant that data into DNA as well as retrieve it. Amazingly enough, this means that DNA is not only storage for biological data, but in fact a form of digital storage for any data. It is estimated that 1 gram of DNA can hold up to 215 petabytes, which is equivalent to 215,000 terabytes, or 225 million gigabytes. Essentially, DNA is the world's greatest storage device, and we are walking around with massive hard drives of data and legacy within us. DNA is, in a way, our own personal memory card for whatever this game of life is. But it somehow gets even crazier from here. That data and information that they were able to place inside of and retrieve from DNA wasn't all they tested. In fact, they also placed malicious computer code into those physical strands of DNA. Their aim was to show that computers working in gene sequencing were vulnerable to attack, and that a malicious code implanted in DNA could in fact attack those computers. But they might have also inadvertently revealed that what we perceive to be biological reality is in fact computer code. Our very DNA has the capability of carrying malicious computer codes and viruses that could infect other computers and perhaps even one day other humans. It really makes you wonder about all of this: life, existence, the simulation theory, the very thing that constructs us. The DNA inside of our cells can store and run computer code as well as viruses? What exactly are we? Are we nothing more than advanced computer code in a simulated reality? I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm simply exploring the possible reasons we could be living inside a simulation.
Hmm. I mean, it is a philosophical exercise that can go on all night, and certainly with additional drinks involved, it could definitely go that way to like 6 a.m. in the morning at least. But it is interesting though. I like the way it was presented as just kind of the facts that they understand. I would definitely we'll put the link today to the video, of course, in the whatever we do.
Description.
Going to do that thing, yeah. But I thought it was it's a really interesting exercise, but also I can see how it could be believed, and it makes me wonder. Definitely, definitely kind of a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah. So, listeners and viewers, let us know in the comments, or in the reviews whether you believe we're in a simulation or not.
I like to know if you're going to take the red pill or the blue pill, or are you Neo, or are you uh, what's your face?
Trinity.
Trinity. Yeah, there we go.
Well, if you enjoy this content, please give it a like and share it across your socials to help get the word out about our show. If you hadn't already done so, please subscribe, and on YouTube, hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.